Ready, set, go!
Speech on.
Ready, set, go!
Which state borders the Great Lakes? Utah, New York. Which state borders the Ohio? Which of these states is Montana? Madison is Wisconsin. Which state shares a border with Nevada, Idaho? Which state shares a border with Indiana? Which state shares a border with North Georgia? Which of these Which state borders Michigan? Minnesota. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Oregon, California, Oklahoma, Utah, Nevada, California.
Ready, set, go!
Which of these Which state borders the Mississippi River? Arkansas, Arkansas. Which state borders Tennessee? Which state borders the Great Lakes? Wisconsin. Which state borders the Pacific? Hawaii. Which state borders Washington? Which state borders the Mississippi River? Iowa. Which state shares a border? Georgia. Which state borders Louisiana? Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? Delaware. Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? North Carolina. Which state borders the Great Lakes? Ohio. Which state shares a border? Maine. Which state shares a Mississippi? Which state borders the Great Indiana? Which state shares a border with Nevada, New Mexico, Utah? Annapolis is the Maryland. Which state borders the New Jersey? Arizona. Which state shares a Massachusetts? Which state shares a Alabama? Richmond is Virginia. Which of these? The flag below belongs to Texas. Which state borders the Florida? Which state shares a land? Montana. Boise is the capital of Idaho. Lansing is the capital of Michigan. Which state borders the Atlantic Ocean? New York. The flag below belongs to Minnesota. Massachusetts.
Ready. Go.
Which state borders the Atlantic? Florida. Which state borders the Pacific? Hawaii. Which state shares Massachusetts? Albany is the capital of New York. Which of these states is Indiana? Which of these states is Which state borders the Mississippi River? Indiana.